Hi.
Right.
Okay. So, a lot of stuff to do today. Uh, that's. Let me start with sharing the following screen with you, which is from Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, Tzidkas Tzaddik, Simon Os Kuf Nun Tes. Yachid Shisha Mochlim Lo Uchol Olam Kulo. If a person does tshuva as an individual, then they forgive him. They forgive the entire world. Moshe Mazal. How's it possible just because one person does tshuva, everybody gets mechila? But if, in other words, if Reuven has Yihurei tshuva, then that arouses Yihurei tshuva in other people as well. Not everybody can be this yachid who's going to arouse the entire world. Obviously, it hasn't occurred yet, this statement that yachid Kulo. Like Mashiach ben David, who yet came. Only Mashiach ben David was a person like this. Let me emphasize this. Koleles, we call hanafashos, because his soul has to include all of the nefashos. Because otherwise, his thoughts of tshuva could not bring about the birth of thoughts of tshuva in people who are not connected to him. And the Hurei Tshuva, of course, have to stretch the entirety of his neshama. Somebody includes the entire world. In that case, he has all the powers in the entire world. If he does tshuva with only one of his strengths, only arouses tshuva amongst those who are linked to that koach. He was in a Neshama Klolis as well. Because he's the fourth leg of the Merkava. And he erected the try to translate this Ola, the ascent, let's call it Tshuva. But Rak Bavon Taibalabat, he only did it by the Avera of lust, which was his hate with Bathsheba. Ravam, who was clean of this sin, like I heard, he was called the Frasi Shapir Sham, Zemishla Ra Kerem Yamav. The Frasi, the Bjorn ben Nevat was called the Frasi because he never had an emission. That's what he found favor in the eyes of the Navi Achia. Shudarka de Shiloh. Achia came from Shiloh, Yesh Yachtim Shevet Ephraim, which connected to Ephraim, of which Ravam was. Lo Shav Nechlak al Malchus Beis David. Lo Shav, sorry, he didn't do tshuva. Nechlak al Malchus Beis David. He did not do tshuva because the power that was David's power of tshuva, which was connected to Taiba, was one which Yeravam did not need, and therefore whatever tshuva David did not impact Yeravam in any way, shape, or form, and therefore Yeravam was the one who argued with the house of David and set up the northern kingdom. Bezulas Avos with David, besides the Avos and David and Melech, there was nobody who encapsulated the entire world. Moshe Rabbeinu encapsulates only the Talmidei Chacham. That's it's called Rabbeinu and not Rabbeinu. It happens to be that the Dor HaMidbar was a door of intellect in which everybody's a Talmidei Chacham. So that entire door was Nichla and Moshe Rabbeinu, but not subsequent Doros. Shari Yechidim and other individuals Shishavim who do tshuva Yeshem Michos Lashib Rak Nefashos Tolim Bohem. They can only bring about the tshuva of those nefashos who are contingent on them, but also Klach Shishavim, and with that strength, with they do tshuva. Because the Talmud b'Menachos Shadei Tshuvaso. This is the one who was tzitzis beat on his face and told him not to be over the avera with a prostitute. Shadei Tshuvaso Regam Mihur Tshuvaso Isha. By his tshuva, he also provoked a thought of tshuva in that woman who then shows a shechasto who belonged to him. And because afterwards he became, and the evidence is that later she became his wife. The rest of it I'm not sure we have to do at the moment. The point which I want to make with this Tzadok is that the idea of Mashiach being the Neshama closed of all generations, so of his generation, all generations, is not one which is unique to Chabad. Reb Tzadok was not Lubavitcher. Reb Tzadok was Chassid Ishbitzer, who was a Chassid of the Kotzker. Was a Chassid Rebbe Rabbi Bar Shishcha. It was a completely different school of Chassidus. And yet, we find the same idea of Yechida Klolis in other Chassidus as well. So therefore, the idea of Yechida Klolis is not one which is unique to Chabad. The only thing which is unique to Chabad is the identification of the Yechida Klolis. But the idea of Mashiach being Yechida Klolis, and presumably also the Rabbeim being Yechidos Kolios, because obviously it talks about Yechidim who have neshamas, which in the Nefashos which are Tluyim Bohem. That concept exists in every Chassidus. I shouldn't say every. Exists in Chassidus outside Chabad. Okay, that was point number one I wanted to make. Point number two was to do the Rambam in Hilchos Melachim, which I'll also screen share with you in a moment.
All right.
Not that you can't get it yourself, but
yeah, I went and got it. So it's Hilchos Melachim and Muhammas.
yeah,
Which parak?
second to last.
Yudov.
Yes. So first he speaks about the idea that there is going to be a Melech Moshiach, and then he speaks about the things which are going to happen in the future in general. Then he gets to Gimel, where he speaks about the don't think that the Mashiach has to do signs and wonders and do new things in the world, or to resurrect the dead. That's not his job. Now, in my mind, and
you
again,
you should see the Shabtai Frankel.
Okay. Now, this line, in my mind, is a line which is irreconcilable with the Hasidic doctrine of Moshiach in general, not just Lubavitch, which is Rabbi Akiva Chacham Goyim Chacham Mishnah. The emphasis is almost is superfluous. We know Rabbi Akiva was a Chacham Goyim Chacham Mishnah, but the point is that if anybody was a Yechida Klolis, I don't think the Rambam held the concept of Yechida Klolis, but if anybody is the Yechida Klolis in the generation, Rabbi Akiva is the Yechida Klolis, right? And yet, Voya no se Caleb ben Koziba Melech, and yet he bore the arms of Ben Koziba, not even Bar Kochba, Ben Koziba the king. Voya Melech Shua Melech HaMoshiach, and it was said concerning Ben Koziba that he was Melech, and Ben Koziba was not by any stretch or of the imagination one of the great Tanoim of the generation, one of the great Talmidei Chacham of the generation, even according to what Chazal say about him disparagingly, ultimately, one of the great tzaddikim of the generation. He was a very strong and mighty and powerful person. And therefore, when, to my mind, the Rambam cannot be reconciled. And again, I'm sure they have many answers, but I doubt that any of them have any validity in the face of the Rambam. Clearly the Mashiach is a general and a powerful general, and nothing more and nothing less. It could be that Mashiach is going to be also a holy person, but there's no guarantee a Mashiach is a holy person. And therefore, the idea of Mashiach is not necessarily that of Yechida Klolis. Okay? It goes on. They all thought he was the Melech HaMoshiach until he was killed in his sins. Now, the Lubavitchers are medayik this. They say, once he was killed. Not Keman Shemes. If he's killed, he's not Mashiach. But if he dies, he can't be Mashiach. Okay. It's cute. I don't necessarily buy it, but it's cute.
Yeah, it's cute, but I wouldn't buy it either.
Okay. So the assumption, they would say that Nerag is specifically when he was killed in the middle, because that arrested his development. Death is only a temporary setback. Not being killed, which is a greater setback, evidently. But that's it. But no dam she'eno. So again, I don't. You and I were not distinguishing Nerag and Mace, but they would. But also, lo shel melech hachamim lo os lo malchus. Didn't ask for any signs and wonders because that's not the purpose of Mashiach. And again, if the Lubavitchers believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach because he was an extraordinary person and he could do also some ofsim, that's great. But that's not one of the parameters of Mashiach. This is the primary concept. Shatorah zos chukel mishpatel olam olam and mosifan lam below garim my hand. Torah is eternal, forever and ever. We don't add them and don't retract from them. Now, here's interesting. I want to go to the Ravid now. I saw this Ravid. Ayala daichule Amar Rav Lo Ben Kosiba Yomer Anahu Malka Mashiach V'Sholcho V'Chacham Levoto Imorach V'Doin Olo became Lo V'Hachi Katlu. I don't know. I'm sure the Ravid has the source. I'm not looking at the Franco Rambam at the moment, but the Ravid says that they went to check him if he was going to be able to smell and judge, because it says about Mashiach that there's be morach b'doin. He can use the fragrance of a person to judge if a person is guilty or innocent. And since he wasn't able to do that, they killed him. Now, this is not what appears in our Shas. In our Gemara, it says that he was not much that Ben Koziva was killed in battle in Beitar, and they was killed in battle because he kicked one of the Tanoim, I forget which one, and killed him. So it's clear that the Rambam does not hold that Mashiach has to be morach v'doin. He doesn't have to be able to smell people and know if they're innocent or guilty, because that's not what the Rambam holds is the base necessary requirement of Mashiach. The Rambam elsewhere Mishnah Torah, which I hopefully we'll see a different time, says that the Mashiach will be a great man, and he's going to be somewhat lesser than in stature than Moshe Rabbeinu, than prophecy, but he's going to be very, very smart. But that he doesn't say it in Hilchos Melachim. I think it's in Hilchos Tshuva. I don't remember offhand. I have to look it up. But the in Hilchos Melachim, the Rambam lays down the halachic parameters for Mashiach. And the halachic parameters of Mashiach do not require, according to the Rambam, that he be morach v'doin. And the Ravid also, he says that he's morach v'doin. I don't think that means that he was going to be still considered superior to everybody in the generation, and that's not how they would have identified him as Mashiach. Identified as Mashiach because of his prowess in warfare. Dalit. If somebody rises from the house of David, who learns Torah and is about mitzvahs like David, his father, so there are those who medayik, again in Chabad, that David Aviv means he has to be of the same stature as David HaMelech. I don't think that that's what the Rambam means. I think it means that he resembles David in his being involved in Torah and mitzvahs, because clearly Ben Koziva was not on the level of David HaMelech, but rather somebody who was Yirei Shamayim, who's Oived Hashem. And is going to compel all the Jews to follow it, and to strengthen it. And he wages the word of Hashem. Now, this is again something which in Chabad was made of a big deal, that there were a number of rabbis before the Rebbe passed away who signed a declaration that the Rebbe is B'cheskas Mashiach. He must be soon to be Mashiach. Because of the following three things. If he did and succeeded and built a base of Mikdash in its place, and ingather the exiles of Israel, then he is certainly the true Mashiach. And then he's going to fix the world to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu together. So here are the three things he has to do. Well, first he was if he was he has to fight the wars, right? Where was that? All right, I'm sorry. Right? So, and then he has to be burned because etc. And then you have the Rambam and the censored Rambam at the end of the parak, which is very important.
This is
Rambam. What?
Yeah, this text is slightly different than the Frankel, but okay.
Yeah. So because it's very heavily censored in the original edition.
We don't have. I don't have the Takent Elam Kula Avodas Hashem B'Yachad.
Okay, so the because no, you do, because it's at the end of the parak.
All right.
Look at the very end of the parak.
Okay.
Is it there?
I'll follow you on the screen. Yeah.
No. On screen, I have the censored version. In the Shabtai Frank, we have the non-censored version.
Right. So where do you want me to look in the non-censored version?
At the very end of the parak. The very end of the halacha.
Parak Shneimasar Halacha Hey?
No, Parak Yud Aleph Halacha Daled. At the end of that halacha.
Oh, is what's on the screen all that you have for Halacha Daled?
Yes, that's what I'm telling you.
Sorry, it's late here. I'm slow. All right. So you want me to read it?
No, I don't want you to read it. I just want to point out that that language is taken from later on.
Okay.
No, he doesn't. No, actually, that's not later on. I don't know where that comes from.
Okay, because there's a whole bunch more here in the Frankel.
Yeah. The Rambam Frankel has a whole bunch more because it talks about Muhammad, Jesus and Muhammad, which was censored out. Okay, but that's not necessary for our purpose right now. So in any event, the reason they say the Rebbe was the B'cheskas Mashiach was because he started doing these three things. He was fighting, he was building, and he was in gathering. And I mentioned this last week, I believe. He was fighting in that he defeated the Soviet Union or Iraq in the first Gulf War. He built 770, and he gathered the exiles, the Soviet Jewry, which was able to begin returning to Israel during his Nesius. So they believe that's Cheskas Mashiach, and besides that, he's the Yechida close to the generation. So they believe he was a B'cheskas Mashiach, and they signed a proclamation that he was B'cheskas Mashiach. I have here a letter which was written back in while the Rebbe is still alive, by one of the Chosheva Lubavitchers. His name is Rabbi Benzion Milecki, and he writes about it during the Rebbe's lifetime. He writes, questions raised include the following: what was the meaning of the coronation, which was to have taken place on Sunday, January 31st, Shvat 10? What is the purpose of the Piskei Din, the stating that the Rebbe is Mashiach? To what extent is Lubavitch divided over this issue? Are Lubavitchers deifying the Rebbe? A phenomenon quite antithetical to Judaism. What if the Rebbe doesn't turn out to be Mashiach? Or if the Lubavitchers go the way of the followers of Shabtai Tzvi? How could any reasonable person believe that an ailing 90-year-old man is Mashiach? Okay, so first he rejects the idea of the coronation. He said the coronation was baloney. Nobody meant to coronate the Mashiach, and that was not. It was just a PR hoax. Okay. Then he says, the Rebbe talks about the letter that Rebbe's Mecheskel Mashiach, and he talks about several things here, and he says Judaism believes in. I'm skipping around. Believes in prophets, those whom God grants greater spiritual awareness, including the ability to prophesy future events. The Rebbe has unambiguously stated that Moshiach's coming is imminent, and has explained this knowledge comes to him through the gift of prophecy.
The Rebbe said it came to him through prophecy?
Whether he said it or not is not really material. The point is the Hasidim believe that he said it with prophecy. Okay? Furthermore, he has asked that this prophecy be disseminated throughout the entire world. The Surah Sageula. As with everything in Judaism, clear prophecy is subject to the rule of halacha. Maimonides clearly states that once someone worthy of prophecy has been tested and his predictions have come true, we are obliged to believe him from then on. As that's not true. You need a Sanhedrin to certify Navi. But as the rabbis made many accurate predictions in the past, the most famous being Israel's miraculous survival through the Gulf War. By the way, I made the same prediction. Not saying anything, but I made the same prediction. Halacha obliges us to believe his prophecy of redemption and to prepare ourselves for it. Once people accept the imminence of redemption and couple with the Jewish belief that Mashiach is a human being born of a father and mother, it is only normal human curiosity which leads us to speculate as to his identity. Furthermore, as Maimonides writes in his definitive legal discussion of the subject, the initial stage of Mashiach's coming will not necessarily involve supernatural phenomena, nor will it be a time of universal peace and brotherhood, those only coming later. In other words, Mashiach's initial appearance is pre-redemptive. Nevertheless, according to Maimonides, even at this early stage, it's possible to discern the identity of the Redeemer, and to this end, he cites various criteria by which we may recognize him. At this point, to use Maimonides' words, the Redeemer is only presumed, chazaka in Hebrew, to be Mashiach. We must wait until after the temple has been rebuilt and the gathering of exiles completed before we can say with certainty that he is Mashiach. If our identification Mashiach is based on presumption rather than knowledge, why does Maimonides go to the trouble of discussing it at all? Why not wait until all the chips are in, the temple is rebuilt? The fact that he does is a clear indication that the relationship between the Jewish people and Mashiach is to commence before the redemption has begun. Even then, they are to act towards him in a manner appropriate to his position. Therefore, you have to assume, once you have a presumed Mashiach, you have to treat him like Mashiach. Okay? He goes into the idea of chazaka after that, why it's important to work with Mashiach, because of it's, Mashiach needs partners, and also because it makes him much more tangible. Then he says, having said this, it should be pointed out that not everyone in Lubavitch believes that it is wise to publicly promote the Rebbe as Mashiach. Now, Rabbi Milecki clearly believed that everybody in Lubavitch knows the Rebbe is Mashiach. There's just a machlokes as to whether it's kedai to publicly pronounce this or not. I don't think he's right. I think there are many Lubavitchers who hope the Rebbe is Mashiach. I think there are many Lubavitchers who wish the Rebbe is Mashiach, but they don't know with certainty is Mashiach, and they will be happy to accept anybody who comes and redeems the Jewish people. But like Rabbi Milecki and the Mashiachistin who are like him, yes, everybody is presumed to know. I think even they think, my impression is that they think that even Misnagdim know that the Rebbe is Mashiach. They just don't want to admit it publicly. That's my impression. But he says, to understand the reason for this lack of a consensus, bear in mind that Lubavitch is not an organization in the normal sense of the word. Rather, it's a movement of people inspired by philosophy, articulated by 7 generations of great leaders, culminating in the present Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. The general thrust of these leaders has been to put forward goals and objectives, leaving it to the individuals to implement them. Moreover, the current Rebbe is renowned for encouraging people to develop their own unique talents. As such, although Lubavitch represents a community of common goals, it is by no means monolithic. At present, there are within Lubavitch 3 broad schools of thought. Now, this goes back, of course, to the 1990s, right? But it's still true today. The first believes that Mashiach should only be promoted in general terms without any identification with the Rebbe whatsoever. The second believes that the Rebbe should not be mentioned. The second believes that the Rebbe should be mentioned, but only where such identification will not be divisive or undermine the good work of the movement. Then there is the third school, which believes that the Rebbe should be publicly identified with Mashiach. It is safe to say until recently has been the view of the majority of Lubavitch rabbis, including those serving in Australia, where Rabbi Milecki lived, to follow the second course. Whether we like it or not, however, the massive media coverage of the past few weeks has taken much of the decision-making out of our hands. It is, of course, true that while many rabbis within Lubavitch and without accept the Rebbe as Mashiach, there are others who don't. Can Mashiach come unless he's universally accepted? Sources which discuss Mashiach speak of the opposition he'll face, and that said his arrival will engender. There's, of course, nothing new in this. When Moses came to redeem the Jewish people, there were many skeptics, even among the elders of the people. In fact, even Not even the miracles in Egypt quelled their skepticism. Nevertheless, as the Vilna Gaon explains, use of the Vilna Gaon, as a result of the faith of the minority, the majority were saved. Now the question, what happens to Mashiach doesn't come in the Rebbe's lifetime? Won't the disappointment lead to mass disillusionment with Judaism? We know the answer to that question. The answer was no. It did not lead to mass disillusionment. But there were rabbis who predicted, and pundits, who predicted that once the Rebbe passed away and did not come as Mashiach, Lubavitch would break apart and fall apart. I don't think that I was one of the people who predicted that. I would not made sense to make that prediction, but people did make that prediction.
Mm-hmm.
So he says that our belief in Mashiach's imminent arrival stems not from some vague gut feeling, but is firmly based in halacha. As mentioned above, halacha tells us that a person who is worthy of prophecy correctly predicts an event, stating that his knowledge is prophetic. We have an obligation to believe him. Maimonides compares this to the testimony of two witnesses, which the judges are commanded to accept as fact. Though the possibility exists that the witnesses are lying, although the possibility exists that witnesses are lying. Similarly, continues Maimonides, we are obliged to accept the prophet's words, in fact, in the faith, as fact, in the faith that God would not allow us to be misled. Furthermore, the Talmud says that it was not logical to assume that a person will lie in a situation where he will be exposed. Chief Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs said, well, he was here last year, that it was the Rebbe more than any other Jewish leader who was responsible for the revival of orthodoxy after the Holocaust. The Rebbe's influence extends to all continents of the globe. It's logical to assume that the Rebbe would endanger his credibility, placing his life's work at risk, unless he indeed had prophetic knowledge of Mashiach's imminent arrival. I can't answer that question, but obviously it was not prophetic. It was not not a true prophecy. I don't think it's a false prophecy because I don't think he actually meant it as a true nevuah, even though Hasidim took it as such. But unless you start reassessing and reinterpreting and saying that 25 years after the Rebbe's Petira is still considered to be imminent, then which you can do and which they do. But it's again, it's like I mentioned. I think the Maggid's mashal of shooting the arrow and then drawing the bullseye. Imminent always becomes relative to what the situation is. The comparison of Lubavitch to the followers of Shabtai Tzvi, who together with their leader committed mass apostasy, is groundless. This is, of course, true, what he's saying. If one thing stands out in the terms of the Rebbe's relationship to Jewish law, is his firm adherence to it in all its minutiae. And he demands the same of his followers. This, of course, cannot be said of followers of Shabtai Tzvi, who are well known for their abandonment of Jewish law. Absolutely true. What about the Rebbe's ill health? It may be surprising to some, but the fact of the Rebbe's illness, rather than excluding the Rebbe as Mashiach, actually makes it more likely that he's Mashiach. When Sanhedrin Talmud suggests Rabbi Yehuda Agassi as a possible Mashiach, Rashi explained this because he suffered illness despite being a perfectly righteous man, indicating that he was suffering for the sins of the generation. In fact, according to Nachmanides, the chapter in Isaiah, the suffering servant, is an allusion to Mashiach, who suffers for the sins of the generation. I believe actually the Ramban says it's talking about Am Yisrael, not about Mashiach. But we'd have to look it up. The Sikta Rabati even predicts that Mashiach will agree to atone for the sins of his people through the loss of his power of speech. As a result of the sacrifice, God promised him that no Jew will lose the opportunity of being a part of the Messianic era. The Rebbe's age is also not an excluding factor. Medrash associates the Egyptian Exodus with the number 80, Moses' age at the time. Even more interesting is that it associates the future redemption with the number 90, which corresponds with the Rebbe's current age. In a published letter to the Rebbe on his 80th birthday, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, the lucky giant of our generation, and not of Lubavitch affiliation, wished the Rebbe eternal life. Explained that as Mashiach's coming is imminent, it is no longer sufficient to wish him until 120. Clearly, then, age is not a factor. He goes on to speak then about the publicity issue, which is not important for us at the moment. I want to say one thing off on a tangent, which is that the one of the shattering moments in my relationship with Lubavitch is that back in 1986, when Moshe Feinstein was nifter, Lubavitch Rebbe didn't come to Levaya. I was standing there as Antonius Esther of 1986 outside MTJ, and they announced the coming of the Satmar Rebbe to Levaya. And the Satmar Rebbe, for me, was the opposition. My sympathies are with Lubavitch. And it was a deep blow to me personally. And obviously, Lubavitch Rebbe didn't have to take me into account, but to me personally, it was a deep blow that Lubavitch Rebbe did not come to Levi for Moshe Feinstein. The Gadol Ador in America, the one with which he was on friendly terms, passed away. I know the Lubavitch Rebbe never left Crown Heights except to go to the Beis HaKvaros to visit his father-in-law's grave. I'm well aware of that. And there are times when exceptions can be made. And not having made an exception at a time, to me, was a devastating point. Mm-hmm. So you have the Shabtai Franco in front of you, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to read now out of the Shabtai Franco, which is not in the Rambam I have on screen. Okay, so he goes on and says, Vim lo yitzliach. Right?
So can we pick this up next week?
I didn't get to any of the note. They're going to kill me. I didn't get to any of their comments. I know I'm going to pick it up next week, but we have to get to the comments on part 2. I'm sure you noticed there were lots of them, and some of them were quite strident. So we'll stop here, but we have to come back to those comments.
That's fine. We'll just pick up exactly here next week.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. We bit off a bit more than you thought we were going to chew, right?
It's interesting.
Okay. As long as it's interesting, that's fine.
All right. Shkoyach. Thank you. Bye-bye.